Welcome to the Fair Housing Insiders. We are so thankful that you joined us. And please remember to subscribe here on our YouTube channel or follow and like us on your favorite social media outlet, which you can find links to in our show notes for even more fair housing news and insights. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fair Housing Insiders, episode 106. Thank you in advance for being part of our community, whether it's part of our newsletter or of this YouTube channel. Make sure you're signed up and subscribed to both so that you get the latest fair housing information. Today, we're counting down some of the most common fair housing phrases that seem innocent, but can get you into hot water. We're also going to give you some ideas on what you can say instead. I'm your host, Jonathan Sarr, and today we're joined by Kathy Williams. So Kathy, great topic, some good phrases that we're going to consider today. So our first phrase, we are proudly American here. What's the issue with that?
While it's great to be patriotic, if you are a housing provider, remember that national origin is a protected category, and you should not make statements or take actions that might discourage persons from other countries or suggest that Americans are preferred over other nationalities.
Excellent. Thank you. Our next one. We are an active adult community.
This one is a little complicated because this statement in and of itself is not discriminatory. It indicates, however, that the housing provider believes that a community can be made up of only active adults. Remember, adult is a broad description, and it usually means anyone over the age of 21, right? I mean, that's usually what we think of when we think of adults. And that's why it's not a good idea to use this statement in marketing for housing. It is illegal in housing to limit ages to only adults. The Fair Housing Act does have an exception to familial status, which means you can refuse to house children. However, it only applies to communities that meets one of two very restrictive categories of housing, and that is housing for older persons. And that is much more restrictive than just adults. In housing for older persons, you either have to be a community made up of only people 62 and older, or the second type is a community where at least one person is age 55 and older in at least 80% of the units in a community. So as you can see, we aren't talking about communities made up of adults. We're talking about communities really made up of older persons, at least 55 and older. So that's the problem with using this statement. It really is inaccurate marketing. And just to throw in another issue, some advocates believe the term active suggests that if someone is perhaps not active, if they're disabled, then they aren't welcome in that community.
Good points and good recommendations. Thank you, Kathy. Our next statement. We have stable residents with good jobs.
Like many of the statements we're talking about, this one could be viewed by a leasing agent as a positive marketing aspect for a rental community. But remember, it often doesn't matter what your intention is when you use potentially discriminatory speech. Instead, think of what this statement could mean to someone who doesn't work because perhaps they're retired or disabled and are no longer able to work. If stability is actually the positive characterization that you're trying to convey, then it might be better to say something like, our residents love living here, which is why we have a 70% retention rate year after year.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Our next statement, unlike other areas, ours is a safe neighborhood.
This is a statement that does not actually pose a fair housing problem, but nevertheless, it should be avoided, mainly because of just general premises liability issues for your community. Since a leasing agent can never guarantee that a community is safe and should never guarantee that that resident is always going to be safe if they live in a community, this type of statement should be avoided. Instead, perhaps you could explain whatever steps your community takes to improve security. Steps like extra lighting, courtesy officers that patrol the property, key guarded entrances at all the main doors, and any other measures that your property takes to improve security, but it never will guarantee security for all the residents.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And then our last statement for today's episode. This is an exclusive neighborhood.
This is one of many terms that could be viewed either in a positive or negative light. In the positive view, exclusive could mean special or private. In the negative view, from a fair housing standpoint, it could mean limited or restrictive. Well, then that suggests that this is a community that is not welcome and that perhaps discourages what it considers to be undesirables. And we all know that that term for some people could mean that at that property, people of certain races or nationalities or families with children or people with disabilities may not be welcome. So perhaps rather than using the term exclusive, it might be more inclusive to talk about the community's advantages, and instead of suggesting that some people may be denied the opportunity to live there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kathy. Appreciate your explanation of those phrases. And for our audience, a white paper is going to be made of the list of these phrases of what to say and what not to say. So make sure if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, do that so you can have access to that. And be sure to pay attention to part 2 of this episode. Say this, not that. So we're covering some fair housing phrases that you need to avoid. So thank you, Kathy. Appreciate your insights today. We look forward to seeing everyone next time. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to hear your feedback about today's episode. Do you have a topic that you would like to see discussed in a future episode? Feel free to share that with us. In the show notes, you'll see a link to sign up for our newsletter. This newsletter will keep you up to date with our latest episodes, blogs, and information about our online fair housing courses. Thank you again, and happy training.